Sick. Good morning. Welcome to downtown Tokyo. So I've been wanting to do this video for a while, talk about how has Japan changed me. And I've been laboring over what exactly I should talk about, what would most fit this scenario the best. And since I've come down to Tokyo to visit my childhood friend Drew, who is a huge proponent of me even coming over here in the first place, I thought the time is nigh. Because I've been here for about 5 years, so I got a decent well of experience. And Drew goes back as late as being 10 years old and coming over here and going through the Japanese elementary school system. And so he's got some really interesting perspectives on the whole how has Japan changed me thing as well. So to the backdrop of beautiful old rainy Tokyo, we're going to go out and talk about a few issues ranging from women, relationships, to work ethic, to general values, to food, cool stuff like this. So thanks for checking out the video. I hope you enjoy it. Cheers to you, and let's start the discussion.
Sociopathy knows no bounds.
No bounds.
The unexpected, you know?
Yeah.
Subvert expectations. That's the buzzword. Subvert them all. Oh, jeez.
Alright guys, welcome to the first topic, but first, let me introduce Drew here a little bit. Backstory is that when I was 10 years old, how old were you when you went?
8.
8. Okay, 8 years old actually. Drew and I were best friends, grew up on Vancouver Island together, and then when he was 8, he headed over to Japan and ended up in Japanese elementary school, right?
Yeah.
Which is pretty vicious, as you can imagine, that like the bullying, the challenge of the language, crazy stuff. And I was young enough that it was kind of magical that where did my friend go, and that developed my initial interest to come over here. And so then time ticks by, won't give you my whole life story, but many years later, something happened in my life, a long-term relationship came to an end, and Drew was like, why don't you follow that dream? Because I wanted to come over here as well, because he had gone. And so I came and I started up with one of the dispatch companies, one of the big ones that was Interact, and then moved on to where I am now doing like a direct hire gig. And Drew has a much better job. But that's enough of that. So the first topic that we're going to go into here, now that you got kind of the background, is relationships and how relationships or a perception of them has changed as a result of living in Japan, or just simply what's available to you here. And so I'm going to let Drew open with this, your thoughts on the damn thing. What's been your experience of relationships and how you've changed as a result?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic because, you know, you hear this quite commonly, especially Western men who come to Japan and start dating a Japanese girl. And, you know, there's a lot of stereotypes around that.
Sure.
But that doesn't mirror my experience at all. I've never really been in a relationship with somebody who is, I guess, wholly Japanese. Maybe that's not the right word, but somebody who's only ever lived in Japan. And
You've been dating muggles.
Yeah, exactly. I too am a muggle, yeah. But I guess maybe that's because Japan was an early part of my life.
Okay.
That I'm sort of in between Japanese culture and Western culture.
True.
To some extent. So maybe I seek others like me, and so I've only dated even people of Japanese ethnicity. They've always been, you know, born and raised in America or something similar to that. A bit more international experience. So yeah.
And you can find that here. That was something I've really enjoyed in just my circle of friends as you come here, and the Japanese people are wonderful, but then this whole massive community of expats all over the world, where certainly there was different like ethnic friendships I had when I was in Canada, but usually you're all Canadian. You're all like speaking with the same accent and everything, but you come here, and in my circle of people even I work with, my colleagues, it's like you got the guy from Uganda, you got the guy from Britain, you got the guy from Australia, and so that then extends outwards into your relationships.
100%,
so,
yep.
You know, subverting those expectations, and it's not necessarily you come here and that's how you have to match up or something. You're going to find all the variety in the world, and I think that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, it's been very cool because the people who would have an interest in coming to Japan to live here typically are probably culturally a lot closer to where I'm at as well. I'm not fully North American, I'm not fully Japanese, I'm kind of in between, and so you find a lot more people like that. It's the first time I've met people who I feel like are culturally the same as me. Third culture, I think it's something like that. Third culture people. Yeah, so it's a pretty cool opportunity to meet people like that. Yeah.
And so how has it changed me? What's my perception of things? Like what I find here, and this is like a real hot button topic, I suppose, nowadays, but what I really enjoy in the Japanese culture, and this isn't without its flaws, but I definitely noticed and came to appreciate much more what you might call like traditional gender roles. The difference is that I think that it's when it's done healthily, and when I say traditionally, I mean like a man looks after his woman and provides for her, and the woman looks after her man, and that might extend to like the simplest thing, like when I went out for dinner, one of the first dates that I was on, and the woman at that time started serving me. I was like, that's so nice. And it's not like I'd want to insist on that kind of thing, but when somebody does it freely, and I think that that's like a more traditional value of like serving your man, treating him well in that way, and where you reciprocate it in a healthy way, it's something that I really enjoy. So
yeah.
It's not like I'm insisting that women, back to the kitchen with you. It's not that at all. Although if you're there, bless your heart, that's amazing. I love eating as much as anyone. But where I had taken for granted that in the West we have these like, we're progressive and relationships are now moving forward. We're actually, when you come here and it's, as I say, a healthy representation of that kind of thing, it's really, really cool to see. So I've kind of like gone from thinking that, it always has to be this like progressive, everybody's like, you can perform either gender role in the relationship, where actually adhering to something that might be more traditional, it feels really natural and healthy. So it turned on the head my expectations of what a healthy relationship is in the modern world.
Right.
Now I would coach that in the fact that this goes totally the other way, where the problem is, I think, in the society that when it's insisted upon, it's not something done freely. It's like, oh no, you serve me when we go out for dinner.
Yeah.
That's where it becomes really, really unhealthy.
Gross.
And that's
gross,
right?
Gross, yeah.
And in the same way, where if women are out for dinner with you and they make the assumption that the man is going to pay for everything because he traditionally provides, that's really fucking gross.
Yeah.
But no, if it reaches this healthy balance where you're reciprocal, you want to do this thing for the other person, it is a thing of beauty. And one of the reasons I've changed my views and why I really appreciate relationships here.
Interesting. That's a really cool point. Yeah, that's sort of demonized in the West, isn't it? To be sort of in a traditional gender role. But again, it's a decision. If that's what you're comfortable with, that's what you choose, why not? And that's a far more healthier perspective, I think.
Yeah, I'd just advocate where it seems to be in either culture, the flaw is this insistence on it being one way, where it should just be a choice. If you want the traditional gender roles and that fits you, then do that kind of thing. If you want the more progressive and it's like, nah, that kind of thing doesn't exist, and we kind of like borrow and do this, that, and the other thing, and you kind of make your own whatever, but choose to do it as opposed to having the culture telling you to do it. And I think when you go somewhere and you're exposed to both more clearly, also being outside of my own, where I'm now can objectively look at what it's like, I see the value in each.
Interesting, yeah.
All right, so that's our first chat. Let's see if we can't come up with another interesting topic on how we've changed.
Can we change?
Can we?
Is change possible?
So what's a video talking about how Japan has changed us, if not to talk about the local cuisine and our impression of food and how it should be appreciated and how that's evolved from when we've been back home. So again, you kind of have this like dual culture perspective because you came so early on, but how has the food of Japan changed you?
Oh man, I think probably the biggest thing is texture, I guess, in a word. Lots of slimy stuff and like weird types of crunchy that are different, like cartilage or something.
And they have a lot of the Japanese language is really heavy on onomatopoeias, and especially so when you get into eating, because there's all these sounds for whether it's like squishy or if it's crunchy or
neba
saku, neba,
kari kari, kori kori. it's all.
You've outstripped me for the onomatopoeias.
That's all I know.
It's crazy in that way. So textures.
Yeah, and like I guess maybe that makes it be a bit more adventurous with food choice. So now I'm like eating Southeast Asian food. I'm eating is it like tendon? I'm eating pig's feet and stuff. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Bit of tendon in your pho. That's good.
What about your impression of at least the shared experience of eating in Japan as compared to, say, Canada again?
How do you mean?
Well, when
Like
you
communal
eat with
food?
communal food. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, sure. Like yakiniku, especially like barbecue, where you have a central grill and you kind of fry up the food for everybody at the table. That's super cool. Yeah, it is a more communal experience, I guess.
I definitely that's one of the things I enjoy most that I've been here is that usually when you go out in the West, when I went back especially for my vacation in summer and I went to Vancouver and I go to a restaurant there where I would say like eating in Japan is like a limited number of relationships and different engagements that are like short term, but where you sit down in the West, it's like a long-term marriage. Like you were going to get to know this thing. It's going to take hours.
Right.
It's going to sap your life from you. You're going to question every choice you've ever made. Whereas here, because you share communally, you get that kind of like, you get more of a shared experience and you're just not as fat when you finish it because you didn't have to pound down, albeit an incredibly impressive thing of food, but it doesn't destroy you in the same way. I feel like you can hit your limits more easily. And as well, I've noticed the amount of like, say, protein and vegetables is much higher here, whereas opposed to in the West, when I sit down to most main courses, there's always like a component of it that's like super heavy carbs.
Yeah. Although you do get like carb on carb here. Like you have like an udon dish with like a rice side or something, and you have like 2 or 3 of those.
Absolutely. That's another great point is like, this is kind of interesting where it's like, I feel like generally as a culture, obviously, if you look at the statistics, that they're lighter, they're healthier speaking, but they are way more abusive with their sweets and the sort of things that in Canada, like it would just be like, are you crazy? Like people will die if you make this thing available to people. Like I was biting into something and it was delicious. It was like had this frosting on it, and then the center of it was just literally like a block of butter. And it's like, you can't do that back where I'm from, because if you made that available, you'd see people just like clearing the shelf in the store, like butter with, carbs.
Butter sandwich, I've seen that.
Butter sandwich. I'm
and
like,
it's sugary butter too. Sometimes.
Butter was not enough. Actually, and butter flavored chips. That's another thing I really enjoy, which is like change my impression of what a conbini can be. But I relate that more to the sort of seasonal stuff that you get, where like every single season in Japan always has distributed through the stores, the supermarkets, like a bunch of different food that you can try, whether it's beer, whether it's sweets. And I really like that. It's like as though the culture is especially in tune with the changing of the seasons as a result of that, and you look forward to things a little differently.
There's a huge cuisine tradition of that too. Shun no mono, like the seasonal.
What's it called?
Shun.
Shun?
Shun, it refers to like something that's in season.
Oh,
so for instance, I probably have it wrong, but in May, it's like you eat a certain type of fish with like ume, like plum paste or something.
Okay.
That's, again, I'm probably wrong on that, but it's the idea is that something's always coming into season and there's a season for a thing. But then they have these limited releases. So, for instance, you get into summertime, all the main breweries release like a limited release summer saison or something. That's really cool. Yeah,
it is. Yeah, I definitely love the variety here. One other thing you want to go into, it's also changed my impression of tipping culture. That's like a huge one, just because they don't have it here, where you really question. I don't know if it's that people are more screwed over in the serving culture here, and it just like it should be in place, but I do appreciate that here when you go out and there's no tipping, that the level of service is still at or above
way
anything
above.
I've ever.
I would say way above.
Way above.
Maybe not as friendly, maybe not as interactive, but way more professional. Way more considerate. Yeah.
It's really, really good. Yeah. So many, many ways you will change as a result of the culture here. And probably, I mean, we were already pretty good-looking guys, but if you were a heavier set person, if you were to come here, I don't think it's a myth either, because of the shared communal eating and stuff. You can look forward to losing a few pounds.
You might go up at first as you're trying all these
different
delicious things, and then
the butter sandwich, for example.
Exactly.
You may want to try a couple of those to get in tune with everything.
You should.
Or the one I saw, I think it's just ridiculous, is it's the sub. It's like a sub sandwich, which they put soba noodles in.
Oh, what the fuck?
I know.
I've never
Okay,
seen
yeah,
that, yeah.
It's just carbs on carbs.
Oh wait,
on
like
carbs.
yakisoba?
Yakisoba.
Yeah, right.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I've seen that.
Butter sandwich, yakisoba. Take notes. These are delicious. You got to try them.
Do it.
So I'm gonna make an attempt to do the cross-legged thing as
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
which is kind of difficult, but hey, I'm doing it. When in Japan, people cross their legs. Okay, so the last thing that we wanted to talk about, I think it's like just fundamental, is how has your values generally, like in your day-to-day, how you interact with people, and what is from your culture that might have changed, how you, I don't know, lend that to what's here, and how is your behavior now informed by all the time you spent in Japan, and what matters to you. Like it's kind of open, but
Yeah.
what's your thoughts on it? Okay.
Yeah, I would say one concept that really stands out to me is omoiyari,
Okay.
which is, you could translate, I think, as kind of like consideration for others. You know, there's sort of that stereotype of Japanese people being very hospitable, being very conscientious, always thinking about other people before themselves, and I think it kind of stems from this idea of omoiyari. Coincidentally, I'm working on a project now called Omoiyari. It's it's a documentary
All right.
film. I mean, check it out. It's awesome. Lots of great music, lots of interesting history and culture. But the underpinning concept of the film is omoiyari, and it's essentially this idea that we should think of others before ourselves sometimes. And you know, I feel like we often pay lip service to that, especially if you're in Japan. You're trying to observe and understand how you can be more thoughtful and conscientious all the time. But I think if you do kind of integrate that a little bit into your life at a time, it does make a pretty big difference. And again, it's not to say that I'm somehow good at this or like I've understood it very well, but it's something that I do try to incorporate into my life. So I think it's been a big change in me. And it can be little things. There's a really famous anecdote of, I think it was like Oda Nobunaga, the warlord. One of his retainers had taken his sandals that were sitting outside in the winter, and he like kind of put them under his arms or something like that, when he knew that Oda was gonna leave, so that they'd be warm when he put them on. It wouldn't be these frigid like wooden clogs that he had to put on his feet.
That's hospitality.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of like, well, how can I make the other person's experience better? There's the hospitality side of it, but then there's also just more conscientious things in your day-to-day life of, you know, when you're serving yourself, or for like your family, you would serve like the best portion, you give it to the person you want to, you know, have the best experience. If that was a guest maybe, or maybe it's like, you know, if your mom's not feeling well, you'd make a nicer bowl for her, or of the bowls, if there was one that had more stuff in it, you'd give it to her, or something like that. Just the idea of, you know, how can you improve the lives of people around you through your action and through your conscientiousness?
Is there like something that you would say, so that's like the impact the Japanese culture has had on you, and you kind of uptake that. What about from your culture? Is there something that you've kind of like planted here that you feel is something you can share with the Japanese?
That's a good question. Maybe not being afraid to be a bit weird.
Okay.
That's kind of the thing. Like, I notice a lot of Japanese people really want to speak English or like have that sort of more international experience, but they do it in a very formulaic way.
Okay.
They'll approach you and be like, "Hello, I would like to practice English with you," and you're like, "I don't know you, man." That's like such a weird thing.
Yeah.
I'm not like English robot that you can just language rape. Like, you can't just like come up to me and use me for that. Yeah, it's so there's like, that's a really good way of making somebody feel very uncomfortable as a foreigner, is if you're just like, "Hello, you're a foreigner robot English speaker, I'm going to practice with you."
Yes.
But I think it's not necessarily that nefarious. I think it's well intentioned.
Yeah.
So I'm like, just go up and be weird to somebody. Just be like, hey man, and just talk to them like you know them.
Sure.
And then like comment on your general surroundings, like, hey, you like flowers?
Blue flowers all
Yeah,
the
you
rage.
like? Yeah, me too. All right, see ya, and just like leave and be weird, and that's okay. That's gonna be a far more memorable, interesting experience than if you're just like your over considerateness makes an artificial, strange division.
Yeah, it
you know?
actually like puts them at a distance.
Yeah.
There's like I think you even see this. This is something which I've learned, or I have an impression of the culture, which has changed my impression of politeness. Is exactly what you're talking about, where actually you realize how much politeness can be used to create distance.
Yeah. Yep.
Where you would think because somebody was being really, really polite to you, that means that, oh, they're really, really nice. But it's actually more this feeling of, I don't really know you, and so I won't let you see any true side of myself.
Right.
Like, what are, I'll use your experience here. What's the name of the faces that they have? It's like tatehone,
Tatemae,
tatemae.
and honne.
Okay, and that's like the two faces of what you show the world and who is actually a representation of yourself. And it's kind of woken me up to where there's no limit to the way that we can be rude to each other, as much as there's all these different ways that we could be polite as well.
Yeah.
And you do, I think, innately learn when you come to Japan that it changes you to read situations more subtly.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
it's, what is it, kukiyomu?
Kukiyomu, yeah. Right.
Kukiyomu, which is like read the air.
Yep.
And that's definitely something that is not that I feel like maybe being a more introspective person, not introspective, introverted person, that you do that naturally. You're reading situations a bit more, but I definitely found that heightened in Japan. There's like it is not just what would you say? It's not a meme. It's not just a stereotype that people are more subtle in their interactions towards you.
Yeah.
And even in a lot of positive ways. That's the other end of this spectrum, which I've learned to appreciate, is to subtly show appreciation for somebody, where you know that even in what seems as though it's an insignificant act is not. It could be like the smallest gesture of kindness, which actually shows like a real kinship to you. And I like that. It kind of gives you, what I learned is like more of almost a sense of scale in Japan, where one of the things I really appreciate in the language, where in English, if I want to say that I really appreciate what you did for me, I would just say thank you, or I'm so grateful, and it would have to be almost tonal, whereas
it's how you say the
how
thing.
you say it,
energy.
which is cool. But then I really enjoy in Japan that whether it's to create distance or draw closer to someone, that you have to make use of the language that has all these levels. And when you get into Keigo, I can't remember, there's like, you could again help me here, there's basically humble expression and respectful. So that's like, you can have like just the basic mas forms of verbs, which is polite, but then there's this other layer where if you want to put yourself here compared to a person and humble yourself, you can do that to show appreciation. Or you could be doing both at the same time. You could use humble language for yourself and respectful language for them, so you can show just how appreciative you are of whatever it is that they're doing. And I like that depth of expression that you find in the language, which when I say that it's weird because it's very subtle, but because you do things subtly and appreciate them at every level of scale, then you have more available to you.
Yeah,
it's like Louis C.K. has a great bit where he talks about listening to people in line and they hear this joke and they go, "Oh, that's hilarious."
Oh, right, yeah,
And he says in it, he's like, you know what hilarity is? It's actually you have lost your mind due to how funny this is.
Yeah.
Deborah being a bitch is not hilarious.
Yeah,
And it's
right,
like because we so carelessly or kind of like one kind of tone used language,
this is
you
epic.
learn epic. You lose the nuance, and I find that is what has changed me here significantly, the nuance and the scale with which you can express yourself.
That's super cool, man, and I don't think a lot of people pick up on that necessarily. It's a cool observation.
So I hope you guys enjoyed this little ramble, these cool spots that we managed to find. This one especially, kind of an interesting backdrop. If you like the video, you know all these things, I would appreciate if you like it. What's your experience in different cultures? How have you changed as a result of either travel, perhaps even in your own country? Like every place is its own little microcosm. Have you lived in a bunch of different areas in your country? What's that like for you? And why don't you hit that bell notification? There's that thing in the corner. Ring the bell if you want to get updates on whenever the next videos are coming out. Really appreciate you guys watching. Follow me on all that good social media, mostly Instagram now because I'm trying to like get it all into one place. If you do care to do so, there's always my Patreon if you want to support the channel. I really appreciate that. And Drew, thank you, sir, for coming on the show today.
Cheers,
it's
man.
good. It's about time.
I'll see you guys.
See you guys later. Peace.